Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it's pretty clear by now that the Whimpering Wastes game mode, which you can enter using this fantastic portal over here, is a bit of a struggle for a lot of players. And one of the big reasons why is obviously that whole notion, right, that these enemies are going to be moving a lot. Sometimes their AI makes it so they'd rather run away from you rather than fight you. And sometimes you just wish you had some way to hold those little bastards in place so you can keep hitting them with all of your attacks. And not a lot of characters, right, have built-in suction, have built-in time freeze, have built-in grouping, and that can make the game mode a bit of a struggle for a lot of players. We've been hearing a lot of talk about characters like Rosia, right, being very, very, very powerful, very meta. Characters like Jian being very strong and very meta. And also even characters like Yang Yang getting a lot more popularity because of their built-in grouping. However, what if I told you that you could make any character on your roster who's a support or a sub DPS, one of those roles? And so with that, I've got something really interesting to share with all of you guys. I saw a post on the Whimpering Wastes subreddit, which is basically outsourced from Billy, about how somebody was using some one-cost echo skills like the Zig-Zag to get their clear done with a character like Encore. And we all know how bad Encore is in this game mode. I got a little bit of inspiration from this, and I decided, hey, why don't we go ahead and make a guide on it? And so with that, I've done some preparation, I've done some research, and I've gotten some new one-cost echoes as the active skill for my Verena and my Sanhua. And we're going to be going ahead and testing this out with characters like Camellia and a bunch of other members of the roster to see whether or not they're better or similar to a clear like one with Rosia. So with that, I've only got a +5 untuned Whiff Whaff for my Verena support. I don't really need anything else for her because I've got variation in 235 ER. She'll have everything she needs across her rotation. And the great thing about the Whiff Whaff, right, is it summons an air explosion that first deals a little bit of damage and then produces a low pressure zone that pulls enemies nearby towards the center for 2 seconds and then deals damage up to 6 times. And so with that, I've already mentioned that there was a lot of potential for some 1 or 3 costs. We're still going to be seeing, in the future if there are more possibilities here. But I do think that Whiff Whaff is finally one of those game modes where these skills that the developers have coded and put into the game are actually going to have some sort of use. And so that's what's going to be on our support, a suction ability, right? I don't think it's going to be as good or as long-lasting as Rosia's, but it's something that we're putting on the Verena. And of course, we're going to be sacrificing the fallacy of no returns echo skill, the one that gives the teammates 10% bonus attack, but that's nothing too crazy. We're not going to miss that too much, especially with all the buffs in the game mode. Next up, I'm going to be having my Sanhua over here with a Zig-Zag in the main slot. I just +25 banged this to see what it was. It's absolutely dog shit. And what you're going to find is that my Sanhua doesn't really have the best stuff on her either. That's kind of going to be the point. Use a bit more of a low investment build on her and use her mostly as a CC'er. And what this will do is it'll create a stagnation zone that only lasts 1.8 seconds with a 15-second cooldown, but that hopefully should be enough to get some of those enemies in much more easy to hit positions. So with that, we're going to be trying out this combo. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to save this as a loadout. I'm going to call it the Whiff Whaff Slayer, and we'll go ahead and we'll give it a try. And so with that, I'm going to first be using a bit more of like a meta team in the Infinite Torrents. We'll be trying this out with other DPSs, but I just wanted to make a go with Camellia, that same Verena, and the Sanhua. And of course, I'll be using the crit rate and critical damage upgrade as well. This is to sort of simulate what you can do to play like you have a Rosia, especially if you're struggling, if you don't actually have her. And we'll see how good this combination actually is. I'll just be putting in a dummy team on the other side. You don't have to worry about these characters. So the Camellia that I'm going to be working with over here is going to be 68.6, 291 with 119.2 ER. She's going to be having a full set of the Havoc set with Nightmare Crownless in the main slot. And so with that, we're again going to be having Verena on suction duty, and we've got Sanhua on freezing duty with time slow. So let's go ahead. Let's give it a try in this very first part of Infinite Torrents and see how we do. So, since this is the stage where we have our Concerto fueled first, you want to make sure that you don't actually start off on a Camellia, because you want her to actually ephemeral and enter budding state with, well, everything active. So with that, don't do that. Make sure you swap to Verena as fast as possible. When you restart, you'll restart on the character that you quit on. So that's what we'll be doing here.
The fruit of evolution. Stay behind me. Reborn from
And just drop down all of those echo skills. And we'll get right on into it. Do some shredding.
Stay behind me. Like frigid death. The fruit of life is in everything.
And the suction is going to have a minor effect on the elites. It's not going to, like, go ahead and, like, drag them towards the center.
Deceivers.
But you'll be able to get some good results regardless.
Grafting. Suffer. Entwine. Stay behind me. Shackles be gone. Ha. The fruit of a bask in the sunlight. Stay behind me. Bloom from ashen shell.
We got the Zig-Zag doing some work right now. Ice crystals all around us. And one dancer that just decided to fuck off to the middle of nowhere.
It's getting fun.
One shot all of those guys with ephemeral. And we're ready for the next wave. That's crazy.
Lotus pervade. Luminous energy. The fruit of evolution. Sprout of budding seed. Don't run. Keep the dance going. Bloom from ashen shell. Vitality sower.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Stay behind me, like frigid death. Listen up, fruit of evolution.
So as you can see, we got some pretty decent grouping in there. And the final score for this run was about 33-30. I did a run prior to this, right, that had a little bit better RNG on the dancers, and I got around 3,500 on that one. And this is the thing, guys. I think that the grouping that we got from these one costs, from these little dudes, it's a pretty decent, it's a pretty sizable area. And it helps out a ton, especially when you get some of those dancer spawns that want to go a little bit crazy. And I think there could have been some better timing. Camellia has a tech where she can double intro, right? You swap to her after Verena, and then you build up some of her buds, and then you just go ahead, you drop this, activate Sanhua's outro skill, and then go back to Camellia. There's a lot of interesting rotations that you can do to weave in a lot more of this stuff. So, you might be wondering, oh, are one costs the way to go? Well, we won't know for sure unless we try out what it looks like without them. We gotta have side-by-side comparison, right? To see which one actually feels better. So, we're just gonna be taking the same exact team. Don't worry who's on side 1. Or side 2, and we're gonna switch back their forecasts or their active skill to the forecast. Right now we have the fallacy. We're gonna get some healing. We're not gonna get a healing bonus. What we're going to get is extra ER and more attack. And instead of the Whiff Whaff, or instead of the Zig-Zag, we're gonna be having the Impermanence Heron, and that's gonna provide the damage buff to Camellia. So with that, let's go ahead. Let's give this one a try and see how it does in comparison. I don't think it's going to do as good.
Stay behind me. A change of perception. Reborn from ancient roots. Chaos.
I think we're going to run into some potential grouping problems. Do keep in mind that if our RNG is really good, if our RNG is, like, really good, right, and the monsters kind of go exactly where we want them to go, nothing's really going to be a problem, right?
A change of perception.
Because the only issue that those one costs solve is grouping issues. And, well, if you don't have any problems with grouping, kind of unnecessary. Okay, we're having a bit of a situation here. All right, let me just wait for this guy to slowly walk over to me.
Crimson Blossom.
Stay behind me. Frozen blockade.
Life is
Okay.
everything. The fruit of evolution.
Stay behind me.
Sprout of budding seed. Struggle harder.
All right.
Entertain me.
Hey, the same exact walking away thing happened in my other clears, so I actually went ahead and I chased it down. So these clears are on pretty equal floor. They both kind of got fucked over a little bit by RNG. Okay, this one is really bad by RNG. All right, this is where I would love the grouping from the one cost, because right now I am a little. I think this run is fucking cooked. I think this run is cooked. I would have really liked that grouping right now.
Feed my blossoms, self-deceivers.
Oh, it actually worked out. They came back.
Sprout of budding seeds. Crimson Blossom.
They came back at the end there. And as you can see, that kind of wasn't that good. We did have a straggler in there. Maybe that's why we weren't able to clear as many waves. But I'm going to be honest, I don't even think I played that much differently. And guess what, guys? A stagnation zone will delay the enemy's actions. And so, hypothetically, with the way stagnation works, those enemies that jumped out during this clear and caused some really bad grouping might have simply not done those attacks if they were stuck in the stagnation zone from the Zig-Zag. That part where they're stuck in there and stagnated, we might have just slayed them in time, and then they wouldn't have done the whole jumping out thing. But because of this situation that we were seeing over here, well, the grouping got a little bit messed up, and we had to delay some attacks to make sure that we were hitting everything. And unfortunately, the clear was quite a bit worse. And the thing is, consistency is key, right, for this game mode. And we've already seen one example of how those grouping one costs can help out a ton in the clear. So now that we've gone ahead and we've shown some of the potential for all of the different one costs that I've been using in this game mode, I wanted to talk about who the characters are that I think would benefit a lot from it. And I've got a couple of them listed out over here. What you're going to notice is that these are the sub DPS characters. I've got characters like Jeja, I've got characters like Yinlin, I've got characters like Sanhua, who we clearly used. And believe me when I say that you're not missing a lot of damage in this game mode if you're deciding to use something like a Zig-Zag on these characters. Level of time slowdown, the wide AoE, and if you're on Moonlit Clouds and playing a bit more of a buffing role, the ability to flex between a Whiff Whaff or a Zig-Zag is absolutely insane. And if you're using characters like a Yinlin, you're using characters like a Jeja, it's clear that they don't have a lot of built-in grouping by themselves, right? They have high damage output, but a character like Jeja specifically can't really damage a lot of the enemies in Whiff, along with her, one of her best in slots teammates, Carlotta. Having that built-in grouping in their kits via something like the Whiff Whaff is absolutely incredible. And if you don't want it on Jeja, you want to stick her on coordinated attack, then hell, take your Shorekeeper, right? And use the Whiff Whaff on the healing set to give her even more grouping and let it persist off field as well. And so I would say there's definitely a lot of potential here. The meta use, I would say, is Whiff Whaff on your support and then a Zig-Zag on your sub DPS using the Moonlit Cloud set. And that's probably going to be one of the most optimal ways for you to play a hyper carry team. There's a ton of potential here, and we haven't even explored what is going to be in the 3 cost category. There's a lot of different sets. There's a lot of different echoes. We're just going to have to see, especially with all the new ones, right, that got released in 2.0, what some of those better combinations are going to be. Because you kind of have too much damage in this game mode. It's about having better grouping. It's about damaging a lot of enemies at once. It's not necessarily, right, about doing the highest nukes possible. And I'm very happy to see that there's finally a use case for echoes that are not 4 cost. Because believe me, it's getting a little bit stale, using the same exact echoes over and over and over again, when it's clear that we have so much potential across other areas of the roster. And I'm glad that all of this development work that went into, you know, these lesser used skills isn't necessarily being put to waste. So with that, that was just kind of like my rundown on why Rosia isn't mandatory, especially if you're using a character like Camellia, because hell, you can do what she does for completely, absolutely free. So she might still brick your account. All jokes aside, hope you all enjoyed this overview and this rundown. Let me know what you all think. Peace out.